Good morning, and thank you for joining the California ISO's media briefing. Elliot Mainzer, ISO's President and CEO, will be providing an update on grid conditions with support from Mark Rothletter, who is ISO's Senior Vice President and COO. This call is being recorded, and the video file will be posted on the news page on ISO's website shortly after the event. There will be an opportunity for members of the media to ask questions after the update. We'll provide instructions on how to raise your hand at that time. After your line is open, please start by introducing yourself by name and affiliation. Please try and be brief so that Mr. Mainzer and Mr. Rothletter have time to address as many questions as they can within the time allotted for this call. With that, I'll now turn the meeting over to Elliot Mainzer. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'm just going to do a quick sound check, make sure you can hear me okay. Looks like good. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us for this media briefing. We wanted just to continue to make ourselves available just to give you a quick update and see if you have any questions for us as we work through what we're certainly hoping is the final chapter in what's been a truly extraordinary heat wave here and stress grid conditions for the past week and change. So I'm going to start out, though. First of all, I just wanted to just express some deep appreciation. You know, this last week has been really very, very, very challenging. And I've just been so appreciative and so impressed with just the way that the California electricity consumers have come together. Just they've really rallied, come together in just truly unique California fashion and really helped us to work through what has been an extraordinarily challenging time. I'd also like to acknowledge our many partners across the Western United States, many of the utilities, also some of them going through challenging circumstances, working together, sending us extra energy when necessary, and just really together working through what has been not only challenging times for California, but for the broader Western interconnection. So thanks again to our many partners. I'd also just like to acknowledge, you know, we here sometimes it's important to remember that not only are we thinking about the bulk electricity system and the energy markets, but we've also got a lot of people out there in hard hats working on heavy infrastructure, you know, folks that are working on those distribution systems and those substations. Those hard assets have also come under a lot of strain this week, and we're just really deeply appreciative of all the linemen, the line women, the folks right out there at the edge of the system working on the distribution infrastructure who've also done a just absolutely fabulous job working through this heat wave. So with that, I wanted to just turn to just a brief retrospective on last night and just talk about today. We certainly think we're close to turning the corner, but we still have some challenges ahead of us this evening, and even tomorrow's load forecast is certainly is lower and certainly significantly lower relative to the kind of heat. The kind of record-breaking temperatures and demand we've seen this week, but we remain ever vigilant even as we work into the tail end of the week. So last night actually ended up being a relatively quiet operation on the system. We ended up with a final peak load last evening of 50,184 megawatts. At 4 p.m., we triggered the EEA2 alert, which gave us access to the set of effectively emergency resources, both on the demand response side and backup generators that generally performed very well. We also were able to, I think there was definitely some just generally measurable consumer conservation. We are able actually to save some of the demand response tools for the latter part of the net peak. We had very strong imports from adjacent regions. We actually had good wind energy performance last night relative to the previous nights, about 2,500 megawatts of wind ramping up across the net peak as the sun was setting. The batteries were in very good shape and pulled into duty. And as the loads changed, and we hit the last tranche of demand response, as the loads began to reduce and we hit the last tranche of demand response, we were able to stay in an EEA2 without triggering the first stage of an EEA3, in which we request the utilities to arm or prepare for the possibility of rotating outages. So it was definitely a bit of a quieter operation last night, and thanks again to everyone who was able to help us work through those conditions again last night. For tonight here on Thursday, we have the conditions have changed. It's a little bit more of a complex picture. Today, actually, the load forecast is higher than it was for yesterday at 51.3 gigawatts. Some of you may have noticed that we've got some smoke, certainly here in the Folsom, Sacramento area and some other parts of California. There's potential cloud cover. And so actually going into today, not only do we have a higher temperature and an aggregate load forecast, but we've actually extended the flex alert to cover a longer time period today. We're actually 3 to 10 p.m. And just prior to this call, we EEA 1 3 p.m. And the principal reason we've extended earlier in the day is largely due to some uncertainty about how much production we will have from our renewable resource, primarily the solar, during the heart of the afternoon as temperatures towards their peaks. And in the back end of the evening, there's some uncertainty wind energy production we have. So we have some variable energy resource uncertainty today, and significant amount of temperature risk as well. So that's why we've got the flex alert into a longer duration, and why the EEA1 has also running from 3 to 9 p.m. I would say that one of the things that we're monitoring very closely today is just in general when or if we may have to trigger an EEA2. At this point, we do not have that in place. We'll be watching very carefully to see how supply, both within California, shows up. We'll be both within California and in other areas. We'll be watching the thermal fleet. We'll be watching the transmission system. Again, another round of thanks to folks at the Office of Emergency Services and CAL FIRE have just been doing just an unbelievable job. There's another group of people out there in just extraordinary conditions. Imagine fighting fires in these temperatures and just doing a great job of protecting our critical infrastructure. And so we'll be monitoring those risks, and I think by the probably the late morning, early afternoon, we'll have a better sense of whether we're going to need an EEA2 for tonight. Certainly possible. And then finally, and then we'll take the last thing I'd say is, as we turn the corner, tonight certainly we are going to need all of those tools that have been set up in advance to be available to us under an EEA2 ready to go if we need them. And I know we have been asking so much of California electricity consumers, but to be ready for this evening again, just in case the conditions require, to be ready to turn those to pre-cool their homes. It's going to be even earlier today to get ready for a 3 o'clock flex alert, and then to just take those relatively modest steps of turning up their thermostats and just to 78 degrees or above, health permitting, and then shifting the use of major appliances out of that 3 to 10 p.m. time frame. It really does make a difference, and certainly we are deeply, deeply appreciative of it. Tomorrow, as we get into Friday, certainly seeing temperatures and the demand beginning to moderate, still at high levels relative to what we would typically see in a September. Also, the general conditions in California are starting to change. We're going to see some more wind. We've got Hurricane K coming in that with some impacts into Southern California with the wind, and we start seeing some additional risk of public service power shortages. Of course, that's a completely different tranche of tough conditions, and so the utilities in Southern California are in particularly monitoring the situation down there, and I will encourage you to stay closely tuned with them as we pivot from this heat wave and into a new set of conditions around storm and wind and another set of challenges. So with that, I'm going to take a break and see if any of you have any questions about either last night or today. And certainly, again, I'll just close by saying I've also been very appreciative of the media, certainly here in California, but really across the country. I've said it a few days ago. Your coverage has been extremely helpful to getting the message out and really making sure that that those key conservation messages to consumers are clearly articulated, widely disseminated, and just helping emphasize just how serious this event really has been. So thanks again, and I'm happy to take some questions.
If you are on the WebEx, please click on the raise hand icon at the bottom right of the participant panel. When it is your turn, you will be unmuted. Please then state your name and affiliation before asking your question. If you are on the phone, please press #2 on your telephone keypad. You will hear a notification when your line is unmuted. At that time, please then state your name and affiliation before asking your question. And we'll go ahead and move on to our first question.
Hi, this is Garrett Herring with S&P Global Commodity Insights. Question on batteries. So this was really the first emergency week that you've experienced with this level of battery storage on your system. What have you learned about how to operate that fleet? Do you need to make any changes in the way you operate it? There's been a lot of fluctuation in output. You've got price-driven signals, demand-driven signals. Maybe some wires got crossed on one day. What have you learned? What changes do you need to make?
Yeah, thanks, Garrett. I would say that in general, the battery storage fleet performance has been outstanding. And I think in general, what we've seen is what we typically aim for. We want to make sure that the price signals that are being sent from our energy market are lining up with the reliability needs of the grid. And I think that's been very much the case. We are constantly looking at the battery performance, looking at the structure of our energy market, looking at the price signals, the pricing structure. And I think we're learning a lot about how that's working. But in general, I would say that both the performance of the batteries has been outstanding, and just generally the energy storage community has been an excellent partner to the ISO as we've worked through this, and as we're evolving our market rules, and making sure that we're setting up a structure that incentivizes the right reliability behavior, and also make sure that reliability and operational integrity are preserved. So it's very good. We'll have some additional. I'm sure we'll have some lessons learned coming out of this, and we'll continue to evolve our structures. But generally, performance has been outstanding.
If I could, one quick follow-up on batteries. There's been a lot of supply chain challenges. You've got an extraordinary amount of battery capacity on your system compared to 2 years ago, especially. But how much more capacity would you have had for this event had it not been for some of the supply chain challenges?
Yeah, thanks, Garrett. I don't have a precise number for you handy right now, but there definitely have been some slowdown in the installations of the batteries relative to previous expectations. I would say we're sitting here today, I think, just over 3,500 megawatts of batteries on the CAISO grid. I think that's the largest concentration of 4-hour lithium batteries of anywhere in the world. I think our expectation is that we'll have another 1,400 installed by the end of the year. And of course, California's resource adequacy strategy has significant amounts of additional batteries scheduled to come online, but these supply challenges are real, and I think they have for California one of the areas that we've been monitoring going forward, and certainly we're going to be hopeful that the United States, working with its suppliers, will be able to address some of these concerns. So I guess if I had to give you a number for the amount of batteries that we are expected to have right now that haven't been able to come online, it's probably between 500 and 1,000 megawatts. But this is a key part of our resource strategy. So reconciling and addressing those supply chain challenges needs to be a high priority for our industry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and move on to our next person in queue. Caller, please go ahead. Your line is unmuted.
Hi, this is Will Wade calling from Bloomberg News. I have two questions here. One, can you confirm this is the fourth straight day of energy emergencies? I think so, but I wanted to double check. And second, have there been any specific requests to oil refineries to reduce power consumption?
It depends on, so we have at this stage, and Mark, let's double check here. You know, we have had several days, several days in a row of EEA2 alerts, correct? That's the second stage. We have only had one night at this point, I believe, of EEA3, and that's the first stage when we actually declare and we send signals and send messages and communicate with the other systems that we need them to prepare for rotating outages. We have not yet called for rotating outages through this entire event. We have not gotten to that point. The consumer demand response ultimately has come in when we most needed it and helped us avert that. I will have Ann Gonzalez follow up with you and give you a specific set of what stage of EEA alert we hit each evening over the past 5 days to let you know exactly what that looked like. I don't have that right now, and I want to make sure we're 100% accurate on that with you.
Okay, and the refineries?
You know, I do not know the answer to that question. I wish that it's, and I'm just going to say I don't know the answer. I would probably refer you to the governor's office or the California Energy Commission, who would have the answer to that question.
Because that request would have to come from Newsom, not from you, right?
We're not involved in that specific process. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on to our next person in queue. Ann, please go ahead.
Hi, this is Ann Mulkern with Environment and Energy News. Are you planning any kind of analysis after this to look at what went right, if anything went wrong, and what needs to be done going forward? And sort of building on that, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts just now on what should be done over the next, few months and even longer, as, is this the way to operate the grid for the next couple of years, as we're predicted to have, hotter weather going forward and potential energy tightness for the next 5, summers and Septembers, according to some of the forecasts you've put out already?
Yeah. Well, the answer to the first part of your question is a definite yes. Certainly, it's been there'll be some good lessons learned. I think every time you go through a period where your grid and both your human and physical infrastructure gets stretched right to the edge, you can look back and learn and learn from that. And I think in general, I will say that on behalf of the California ISO, I think across the enterprise here in California, the level of communication coordination coming out of the California Governor's Office with the Office of Emergency Services, with the utilities, all the different load-serving entities, the people on the ground level. And I will say, I want to tip a hat to our men and women in our control center here in Folsom. I think it's just been an outstanding job managing to these changes. I think that, and I'm just going to give you, a brief response to the second part, because we'll get there, after we sort of really turn our attention from this heightened focus here on reliability. But certainly I know that all of our planners, I know top to bottom here in California, I think our energy planners, our energy agencies have been and will continue to be acutely focused on bringing additional clean energy capacity onto the system. I think if you just look back, coming out of August 2020, I think it's important for folks to remember that California set records for new amounts of generation put on its system last year. We've put almost 8,000 megawatts of clean energy resources onto this grid in the last 2 years, since July of 2020. That includes, over 3,300 megawatts of 4-hour lithium-ion batteries. And I think there is a very, very heightened focus on resource adequacy. I think at the same time, that California has been really pivoting here in bringing all this new generation on. We're seeing, really the onset of, what are now sort of a new normal of heat and volatility and uncertainty in the system. And recognizing that, I think that was a big driver behind the creation of this strategic energy reserve here over the course of the summer to make sure that we have a set of tools. The California Energy Commission and the California Public Utilities Commission, the utilities have done just a remarkable job lining up new sources of emergency demand response and backup generation, and making sure that if we run into extreme conditions like this, remember we've set all-time records here, not only for heat and duration, but about 52,051 megawatt night on Tuesday was that number is it's just an unbelievable number of what we hit, right? And so I think that in terms of both laying on some additional insurance on the strategic reserve and then continuing to really double down on the procurement of new clean energy resources in California, that is the core strategy. We are doing everything on our side here at the California ISO, as you know, to make sure that we're doing the long-term transmission planning, make sure that there's transmission infrastructure getting constructed and built to be able to bring on these new generation resources, making sure that we're not only developing 4-hour batteries, but opening up new durations batteries, thinking about longer-term dispatchable capacity like geothermal and other resources. And so I think it is, there's an enormous amount of focus in the governor's office, at the PUC, at the California Energy Commission, the utilities across the board. But we acknowledge this is a very pivotal period. We're in a transition zone. We've moved into a new normal of climate volatility, and we're going to have to just continue leaning in to stay up with it. So appreciate the question, but I can assure you there is no lack of focus in getting ahead of the challenges.
So just one quick follow-up. So is it mostly going to be up to the governor's office and the CPUC to decide what needs to be done going forward, or does the ISO have a role in that?
What we do at the ISO is, we are the real-time operator of the system, and we are the entity that does the long-term transmission planning. The core decisions around long-term energy policy goals, of course, are set by the governor, legislature, and the major long-term planning, the forecasting of loads happens at the California Energy Commission. But the key decisions around integrated resource planning and procurement of new resources happen through the CPUC. So President Reynolds and her team are very mobilized to make sure that we're figuring out the kind of resources that are going to have to come online here in the years ahead. And then the utilities have the challenge of going out and doing the necessary procurement. What we want to make sure is that we provide intellectually honest information about our view on the reliability situation, which we've done consistently here, and also to make sure that we're in our role as sort of control tower operator for the system and the administrator of the energy market, making sure that our operations are as efficient as possible as we onboard new resources, that our market is sending off the price signals that are necessary for reliability, and that we also operate very efficiently and effectively with utilities across the West. I think it's important to remember not only was this event record-shattering for California, but we set the all-time record for demand across the entire Western interconnection. And through this entire event, we've been working very closely with utilities across the West to buy and sell and move energy between ourselves. There have been other utilities that have been in distressed conditions here in the last few days, and they've received support. Our Western energy imbalance market in real time throughout this entire event to move on basis between the utilities. We've imported a lot of energy, and that's them. So we're all part of a vastly woven, interconnected Western United States. We support each other through these reliability events, and we're going to continue here in California to bring on, our regulatory agencies and utilities will continue to bring on those clean energy resources to meet the Senate Bill 100 goals, and we will continue to optimize and cooperate with our neighbors in adjacent states.
All right, moving on to our next caller. Caller, please go ahead. Your line is unmuted.
Thank you. Good morning, Dale Kassler, Sacramento Bee. Elliot, two questions. One is the mosquito fire creating any headaches in terms of infrastructure? Secondly, is the cloud cover from the smoke, is that good or bad? Is it good because it reduces temperatures, or is it bad because it reduces solar, or is it kind of a wash?
Yeah, Mark, I know you've been in touch this morning in terms of the real-time impacts on mosquito and exactly what we're seeing in terms of the cloud on the smoke and the cloud cover on solar production loads. Why don't you take that question and talk about exactly what we're seeing today on the system?
Fire itself, it is having effects mainly over the Sacramento area on the ability of hydro generation. It's about 200 megawatt hydro generation that may be affected. Smoke, as a general matter, and cloud cover having effect on load and supply. We've seen both effects. We've seen situations where smoke and cloud cover can have an effect if it's over a populated area. It could have more effect of reducing demand, whereas if the smoke and cloud cover is over the solar fields, it can have an effect on the availability of supply. For tomorrow, we've seen that it has potentially an effect of about 1,000 megawatts of impact on solar availability. So it varies where the smoke is. It varies really around that in terms of whether the supply impacts or the load impacts are greater.
I see. So if it's cloudy over a city, that's good, as it were.
Yes, it would probably have more impact on demand and the cooling effects that it may have. It could have that. Yes. We've seen where storm, well, let's say a cloudy day over the California area, it's not unusual if it's in the middle of the day. Loads actually go up because some of that load that's being served by behind the meter supply then comes back onto the system. So we've seen where cloudy days are like 2,000 megawatts higher than a non-cloudy day.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on to our next in queue. Jillian, please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Jillian, and I'm from Southern California Public Radio. I just have a quick question about the emergency alert that was set on Tuesday. I want to know if that's a bigger part of a bigger strategy to get like more people to participate in flex alerts since they're voluntary, and was the reduction primarily because of residences or commercial industry energy saving?
Yeah. So I guess first of all, I'll say that the use of the WA tool back on Tuesday night was truly an extraordinary event and something that I know was used as a tool of last resort. And so I would say it's not part of any strategy really whatsoever. I think that that's the kind of tool, Governor Newsom triggered that as our grid was really right deep into the heart of an EEA, first stage of an EEA, right? We had directed the utilities to prepare for the possibility of rotating outages. We had asked them to arm their load. We had not directed them to trigger that yet, but we were close. And that hit, and it made a big difference. And, honestly, I don't think any of us have had a chance yet to sort of decompose exactly what was the combination of residential or commercial. But, given the time, I'm sure there were many individual Californians who got that sound, and clearly they responded because we had over 2,000 megawatts of reduction in consumption over the course of half an hour or so. It made a big difference. It allowed us to restore our operating reserves. I would say in general, I think where we, certainly we want as many people signed up for flex alerts, but I think more importantly, California is embarking on developing a more rigorous and sophisticated approach to demand response here. And we've already started that and already begun to sign people up where they're engaged in programs where they're actually compensated for reducing their consumption. And increasingly, I think that the goal is to try to automate this type of request where, where the utilities will and customers will see much more of an automated response on their thermostats. They'll agree to participate in these types of programs and actually see lower costs. But you don't want to be in a situation where you're having to sort of call out for voluntary conservation of such levels. You want to kind of make it more rigorous and make it more automated, and I think that that's what you're going to see happen here. I think that's what we need to see happen here in the years ahead. But I want to say, again, to every single one of those Californians here in the last week who stepped up to make those changes, we were deeply appreciative. It makes a real difference. I can tell you this when we're watching real time, we get to, the heart of the flex alert period, and we start to see the demand curve bend. It matters. It's a relief, and we're going to again need that tonight. And we won't, we'll call the event officially over when it's officially over. But even tomorrow, let's be prepared. So.
Laura, please make sure your device is not set to mute. Well, while we fix this, we'll go ahead and,
yeah.
Laura, is that Laura?
No, it's Christina. I was just saying maybe go to the next one and we can try Laura back.
Okay, then it looks like we have no further in queue at this time.
Okay. Well, I think so on behalf of Mark and our media team and all of us here at the California ISO and our just partners, again, I wanted just to close by again just reiterating my appreciation. The response, just the ability of Californians to come together under an event like this has just been remarkable and deeply appreciated by those of us operating the grid. It's just truly impressive. And again, as I said to all of our partners across the West who've helped us navigate these very, very challenging conditions, we're deeply appreciative. We will, of course, continue to keep you all updated with good information. And thank you again for your reporting and helping us get the message out during these challenging times. So thanks again, and we'll stay in touch.